What is up, everyone? I'm Ryan from Fireside Knicks, and we have been talking about that last three-game stretch and how important it was. And not only did the Knicks succeed, they beat Brooklyn, they beat Miami, they maintained the fifth seed, they beat Boston, they swept that week. Right. We talked about, you're going to have a different conversation regarding this team if they swept that week. And that's exactly what they did. And the conversation around this team has definitely shifted. Right. I think we can sit here and say now, this team is definitely not the same team in terms of how we look at them, in terms of how we evaluate them, in terms of how we perceive them, 3 months ago compared to now. This team is on a different level. They scored very well. Even when Miami got back into that game, the Knicks were resilient. Julius Randle hit maybe the craziest shot I've seen from any player over in recent memory for the Knicks, in terms of just, when you adjust for the context of the situation, when you adjust for, this is a battle with Miami at Miami. This is huge to the Knicks. And he hits what is an absolute, that's a miracle three. I don't think that shot should not be going in, and it did. Randall was untouchable that night. The Knicks offense has continued to kind of just be unstoppable. But before I get too carried away, Dylan, first off, how are you doing today, my friend? And second off, what did you see from that Miami win that was encouraging? Things to note from that game. Take it away, bud.
Right. So I'm doing good, first off, just really excited to talk about the last game. The last game was exciting, really exciting. We got off to that red hot start in the first half. We were up by 15 and a half. Julius Randle had, I think, 25 points in the first half. Things were looking good. Third quarter, fourth quarter were a little slow, and we ended up trailing in the final seconds. As a result, there was, some weird calls going on throughout the game. I think everyone will agree for both sides the calls were a little weird. And Jimmy Butler had 20 free throws, which is a lot. But like you said, the 3-pointer that Randall hit was nothing short of a miracle. I don't to this day I'm still in shock about that. It's been about 2 days now since that game. I'm still in shock that he hit that three. That was an insane shot. Jimmy Butler had pretty much had him in a box that entire possession. He had him nowhere to go. He had him played perfectly, and Randall somehow got that to fall. I don't know how he did, but it was the perfect way to cap off a 40-point night that he already had. And it was like we mentioned in our last episode that game was a statement game for not only the Knicks, but I also said for Julius Randle, it's a statement game. And I don't think they were any short of that. Randle made a big statement that he's a good player, he's a star, he deserves his respect, he can lead a team when he needs to. Jalen Brunson had missed a portion of the second half with an injury. He's questionable tonight, so we could see more of what Randle could do tonight against Boston. But I think that was a huge statement game. And also for the Knicks, the Knicks now, like we've mentioned, the narrative's changed around them. Because now it's like, okay, now this team's really good. This team is something. They would be third in the Western Conference right now if they were in the West. They have 38 wins, same amount of wins as the Memphis Grizzlies, who are second in the West. So, it was a statement game for sure, like we said last time, and I think that win right there, perfect way to end a good week. It was a 3-0 week. We beat the Celtics, and then we beat Brooklyn. We go on the road and beat Miami. Right now, it feels like they can hold their own against anybody. So, I'm really loving what they've got going on right now. And, for a little superstitious here, ever since me and Ryan here started doing these podcasts, they've yet to lose. So, so that's just some superstition, but they've done great, and I'm really excited to see what they keep doing. So, and I'm really excited to see what they could do tonight against Boston.
Yeah, and you kind of you hit on a couple really interesting points there. Knicks have shown, as you mentioned, that they can beat anyone, right? This isn't a team that is scared of their opponent. This isn't a team that walks into a matchup and you're like, all right, this is a playoff team. This is a game you kind of anticipate to lose. When you look at this Knicks schedule, I remember looking at this schedule like the late December run or early in January, and you're like, wow, these are tough games. These are tough games. Not saying that these still aren't tough games, but no longer you're looking at those games as like, all right, it's unrealistic to expect this Knicks team to perform consistently well against playoff teams. Now that is the expectation, right? That the Knicks go in, and if they're playing Miami or Brooklyn, they were favored against Miami, right? And if I'm not, I don't know if I read this stat wrong. It's crazy. It's like what, 2 times in the last like decade where the Knicks have been favored to beat Miami at Miami or something like that. the Knicks have like this is kind of like I don't think people realize how unprecedented it is for a Knicks team to be performing this well. They're on pace to be like the best. This is the best version of the Knicks we've seen since that 2012 team, in my opinion. I know that we were the 4 seed back in 2020, but I saw like this poll where it's like who would win between the 2020 team and this team. This team is beating that 2020 team, right? If you play them enough times, this team is beating
Right.
them more times than not. And I'm really confident saying that this team plays a modern style of basketball. They have a really good offensive rating. They perform really well offensively relative to the league as well. I know that offensive rating stats, like as time goes on, a team's offensive rating will naturally get better because offense has gotten more prevalent in the NBA. But in comparison to their peers, they're one of the best offensive teams in basketball, right? And their ability to put up points, their ability to put up a lot of points per possession, their ability to play the game at their own pace. The At any point in time, it could be Julius Randle dropping an efficient 43 and he looks like he's unstoppable. And another night, it's Jalen Brunson. And then you have guys like Quickly who come off the bench and drill threes. And when Grimes is hot and when RJ is getting things going, these are guys who, they can all score. Josh Hart as well. It's not like the Knicks are short of guys who can be scoring options that can really gash you. The Heat were letting RJ get to the basket, and RJ was torching them on that. When the Heat thought they had, they were running doubles on Julius Randle, he was still hitting those threes. When, they decided to make their game plan centered around Randle, Brunson was able to get more points. I know Mitchell Robinson had a quiet night, but Randle really gave Bam a lot of trouble, right? That's another thing, too. The Knicks were scoring off of, these are Butler and Bam are a really good defensive duo, right? We've seen Bridges on Brunson. We've seen Bam on Randle, and these guys still have prolific scoring nights. So end of the day, these guys can match up with anyone. But kind of looking a little bit ahead, you have a big matchup again with Boston tonight, this time at Boston, at TD Bank. Or TD Garden, excuse me. I don't know if it's TD Bank Garden or TD Garden. I've never been good with stadium names or arena names. So, but ultimately, this is a big matchup for the Knicks, right? At this point, I look at it as it's a cherry on top. The Knicks can beat the Celtics for a third time in a row, and they've given themselves a decent amount of space from the 6th seed, so that they feel like you're controlling your own destiny. You don't feel like you have them breathing down your back. Same thing with the 5th. Honestly, same thing with the 7th seed as well. So you feel pretty comfortable with your lead, but this is still a big game. So if you're looking at tonight's matchup, looking at a Celtics team that's kind of stumbled a little bit lately. Where do you think the Knicks, how do you think the Knicks game plan should be with the Celtics? How do you think the Knicks can come out on top? Who do you think is the guy to look out for tonight?
Right, right. So, like you said, big game against Boston again. It'd be a huge thing if they could win it for a third straight time. That would be huge, not only for their own confidence, but it would completely change the talk about the Knicks. Because then we'd be like, okay, are the Knicks actual contenders? That's what we would start talking about. But looking toward tonight's game, Jalen Brunson's questionable, so that's big news right there. We'll find out later tonight if he's able to play. We could really use his services tonight. That'd be huge. But if he's unable to play, I think you need to watch for Julius Randle again because I said this last game, but he was looking to prove a statement last game, and I think he did that big time. And I think he's going to continue to look to do that. And I think he's going to continue to try to look to be like, to show people like I can lead a team. I can lead a team to winning games. I can lead a team against good teams, not just, against slouchier teams, So I do think he's another guy to watch for. The Celtics are going to have Jaylen Brown this time, most likely. So we're going to have more than just Jason Tatum to watch for because Jaylen Brown didn't play last time we played against them. But so I definitely think you'll see a lot more of Quickly and Hart again. And I think you'll see them guarding, Tatum and Brown. I think you'll see a lot of that tonight, whether Brunson plays or not. I think you'll see that just to tighten up the defense a little bit because Boston's a very good perimeter scoring team. So you're going to be looking at that. But yeah, just to wrap up the point a little bit, Julius Randle is definitely someone to watch for again. I could expect Randle to have another big night. He's had a few big nights against Boston this season. So, I could definitely expect him to do it just again. And I think last game, hitting that game winner was a huge confidence boost for him because it was like, okay, now people see how good of a player he is. And I think it gained a lot of attention. And I think, that helped Randle's confidence too. We haven't heard any more talk about Obi Toppin wanting to play over him or having fans wanting him to play over him. We haven't heard any more of that. So I think that helped his confidence out, and I think you could see him have another big night. That's what I would expect. So he's my guy to watch for.
Yeah, again, I think Randall has continued to kind of evolve in his role. I feel like in a sense of I feel like he's embraced, he's gotten past the He's got to prove himself to New York. He's that guy, right? I think, as you mentioned, that Miami game, I think it was just kind of allowing him to kind of put on display that, you know what, I am that guy. I am this guy, that guy in New York. I am the leading scorer on a New York Knicks team that is that's 10, that is, well, at that point 10 games over 500, now 11, is in a prime position to make a playoff push, has beaten teams that were quote unquote significantly better than them, has beaten teams that, people think will like reality check the Knicks or something like that. Julius Randle stepped up and he had that big game. And I think that that's huge for him as well. The guy I'm looking at tonight, if Brunson is out, I think you naturally going to look at Quickly because he's going to be the starting point guard for the night. But I think a guy to look at for tonight's game, if we're looking at a healthy Jalen Brunson, or even just ignoring the Brunson Quickly situation there, I'm going to go one more time with RJ Barrett. I know that RJ Barrett is someone I used in my Miami game as well, but I feel like RJ Barrett's been playing a little bit more of a better role since the All-Star break. I think he's kind of adapted into, okay, I am more of a glue guy in this team. I'm not the primary scorer here. I'm not even the secondary scorer here. That's Randall and Brunson. I can be the primary scorer with the second unit, but with that first unit, I'm not going to be the guy getting the ball, dribbling it up the court, trying to figure out, whether I'm going to shoot a contested mid-range shot or drive to. No, that's not what he's going to be able to do in this offense in the starting lineup, at least. But with the bench unit, drive to the basket, figure out consistency with that 3-point shot. But more importantly, you could drive to the basket and it feels like it's automatic points. Anytime you check if you go and guys, just go check ESPN during a Knicks game. Let's say you haven't been watching the game and just see RJ Barrett scoring. All of it will see drive to the basket, shot at the basket, layup. He's really good at getting to the basket. He's really good at getting looks there. He can draw some contact, and end of the day, what you're looking for from RJ Barrett is for him to have some sort of you want him to build his confidence, right? And I feel like since the All-Star break, it's looked better. Since the All-Star break, the offense looked better. He's looked a little better defensively, though Tyler Hero kind of gave him some troubles, but I'm not going to kill him for not stopping that Heat surge, because it felt like everything around him, and the entire second half was just a nightmare until that Julius Randle shot. But quite frankly, if you can give me an efficient 16, 17 points, or have a big fourth quarter, right? You can really propel yourself again back into the good graces with the Knicks, number one. And number two, find that confidence. You are still a talented basketball player. You still are a basketball player with the potential to be a part of a team that wins in the postseason, right? There's no reason for him not to feel that way. And if he can find that confidence once again, I really think that this Knicks team can just get to that next level.
No, yes, I definitely agree. RJ is someone to watch for. I could see it. He's probably gonna have Boston has a lot of good perimeter defenders as well. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Marcus Smart. They have a lot of good defenders. So I mean, either or, it's gonna be a tough matchup for RJ. But he could be someone to watch for. I know he didn't have a crazy game against Miami, but like you said, I think he's starting to see now he's becoming more of like the glue guy, a role guy, not really like a guy to go-to guy, if that makes sense. I think he knows his role is changing a bit, but I think he can adapt to that role relatively quickly, and just hopefully he has a big night. I would love to see a big night from RJ because he's had a bit of an up and down second half. I would love to see a good game out of him. I would love that.
Yeah, no, and I think end of the day, what we're looking at here with RJ Barrett is a player who, that's the X factor for the Knicks at this point. That's the guy who, I feel like everything else is clicking. You know what you're getting from Quickly, and it's productive. You know what you're getting from Hart, it's productive. Same thing with Grimes. Well, Grimes has struggled a little bit lately, but you feel like because he's a good defender, he can have his shot off and still provide a positive impact. You feel that way, obviously Randall, Brunson, Mitch Robb, like all those guys, you feel like, they're doing their jobs. Hardenstein, I think, has done a great job as the backup big, kind of lately. Really ever since he had that public quote where he was like, I got to do better. The numbers have reflected it. But end of the day, looking at RJ Barrett, he is the X factor for this team. He's the guy that if he gets better, or if he figures it out, or if he plays up to close to where his potential is, right? This team is so deep. This team is so deep, so deep. But kind of looking at a little bit ahead, because there is that Boston matchup, and then I believe they go and play. Trying to pull up this guy. I know they have a West Coast trip coming up. So yeah, it's Boston, and then it is trying to find their next matchup. My schedule here is not great. I think they play Sacramento next. So that is the start. So it's Boston, and then it's their West Coast trip. Or no, Charlotte, then their West Coast trip. So they're gonna have they're going to have a pretty tough schedule up ahead. Just going out west is already tough enough. When you're playing Sacramento, who's played quality basketball all year, you're going to be playing the Clippers, you're going to be playing the Lakers, right? We kind of saw that 2020 team go on a West Coast trip and then have that great run on the West Coast, and that kind of extended that winning stretch and pushed them into the fourth seed. What do you think this West Coast trip can signify for the Knicks? Because you play the Kings, you play the Clippers, you play the Lakers, you play you play Portland. Those are not bad teams by any stretch of the imagination. There's two teams in there, in the Clippers and Kings, who I think are quality teams, and then the Lakers and Portland are battling it out for a play-in spot. So they're going to be playing you tough. So looking at that West Coast trip, what do you think is a realistic expectation for that trip? Number one, and number two, kind of looking ahead, how comfortable and confident do you feel that this Knicks team can hold on to that fifth seed?
Right, right. So, the West Coast trip, it's going to be tough regardless because going out west is tough for an East Coast team no matter what, no matter how good you are. But, I think what this can show is like, to back up my point from before, they can pretty much handle it with anybody because they haven't really played many West Coast teams this year. They've been handling well against the East. They've handled it really well against the East, obviously. Now this is kind of the test to see, okay, now how can you handle the other conference, the Western Conference? How can you handle that? How can you handle the stars out west, such as like Damian Lillard, Anthony Davis, because LeBron James isn't going to play in the game that we play against LA. So, how do they fare against like Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Damian Lillard, guys like that, De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis. Randall's given Sabonis fits every time we've matched up with that. So I'm hoping in the Sacramento game next week we can handle that really well. But looking ahead, I can expect a good like maybe 6-4, 7-3 stretch over the next 10 games. I'm confident that it's a confident estimation. I'm looking at, but given this Knicks team right now, I'm confident they can win almost any game. With the way they've been playing right now and the way they've been handling these opponents, I have confidence they can handle anybody. Now they're not going to win every game because that's just not how sports work. You're going to lose at some point. We just saw Milwaukee go on a 16-game win streak and then lose last night. So, it happens. Games are going to be dropped. It's going to be that case. But, given our trip ahead and given how we're playing, I'm confident they can finish in the fifth seed. I am confident about that. I'm hoping they can finish fifth, and if really we have a game against Cleveland at the end of March, if depending on the standings then, and depending on how we play against Cleveland, you could even start asking if we could get fourth, which would be really something. That getting fifth seed already defies the expectation, but getting fourth is like, okay, you completely destroyed our expectation completely. Now we have to think of some other expectation for you guys because you guys shocked us, so we got to do something else. But basically, yeah, to my point, to wrap it up a bit, I could see a good West Coast trip. I'm hoping for a good West Coast trip. Watch out for guys like Randall to continue to heat up. If when Jalen Brunson's available to play and stuff like that, watch for him as well. And like you said, RJ Barrett's an X factor for sure. He's somebody because he's someone that makes a difference really from a good team to a great team. He's a difference maker because if he's playing at his best, we're looking at a great team because we're looking at a deep team with 3 legit stars on it that can really make a deep run. If he's playing at like a subpar level, it's still a good team. We still have a really good team. We still have Brunson. We still have Randall. We got depth off the bench with Quickly and Hart. So you have a big difference right there. But I'm hoping RJ can have a big week. I'm hoping he can finish up this season down the stretch with a big run. Continue to see contributions from guys like Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein, guys like that. And I think if you see things like that, then we're in for a good West Coast trip, and then a good way to finish the season when we head back home. Play, and I think we have a couple games against Indiana to wrap up the season. And I think we have another one against New Orleans. Games like that. So if you can get through this West Coast trip, relatively good, relatively stable, have a nice trip, then we could see fifth seed very likely, I think.
I think end of the day, holding on to the fifth seed feels like the most realistic outcome. I don't think Cleveland has a particularly tough schedule ahead of them, unless I could be wrong there. Maybe I saw like a bad chart or whatever. But they do play Boston to open up on Monday. But after that, I don't know if they actually play many tough teams. Not to like discredit if the Cavs actually finish with the fourth seed. I'm not saying like they didn't deserve it or anything like that, right? Because if you have a soft part of your schedule to end the year, that means you probably had a really tough schedule to start the year. They do have a matchup against the Knicks. Like I think it's one of their 5 last games. The first of that last 5 game stretch against the Knicks, but then they play Indiana, Orlando twice, and then Charlotte. They play Charlotte 3 times. They play Miami and Brooklyn 4 times total, so 2 times apiece. So, in those games, I think at this point you're kind of rooting for Miami and Brooklyn to lose still, right? I don't think we're at the point where if we were up 4 or 5 games on the 6th seed, I think I'd say I want the Cavs to lose there. But I think yeah, the 5th seed's kind of the realistic one. That's kind of the one you're shooting for, and it doesn't affect your playoff matchups too much. It just affects home court. But as you mentioned, going out west is tough. Going out west is tough. It doesn't matter who you play. It's always tough for an East Coast team because you're changing time zones. Rest is weird. You might feel a little bit different. So end of the day, I think it's going to be a good way to test the fortitude and like the toughness of this team, because I know these guys are tough, but this West Coast trip is really going to push them, because that's hard to do, especially when you're streaking like this. I talked about this and kind of touched up on this last episode, and I think this is an important thing to bring up. This Knicks team no longer is going to sneak up on people. They've got a target on their backs. Teams are not going to let Brunson go for 30 before they double him. If Brunson's got 10 in the 12, 14 in the first quarter and he's hyper efficient, teams are going to start, they're going to make it life difficult for Brunson. They're going to try to make life as difficult as possible for him early on. Same thing with Randall. They're not going to let these two guys go, oh, well, I'm surprised Randall was so good today. I didn't think he was going to be this good. Teams are going to be prepared. They're going to scheme, and other guys are going to need to step up, because these guys have a target on their backs now. These guys currently have the longest active winning streak in the league. Every team in basketball wants to be the one to break it, and every team in basketball wants a chance to kind of take to kind of reality check or humble these Knicks. So with that kind of shift in terms of mentality, and like we're no longer like a team that we're surprising people. We are now the ones that people are going to be looking at, that we got to beat this team. We got to stop these guys. How do you think that's going to affect? How do you think the players will respond to that? How do you think that changed the outlook of the season? And quite frankly, I mean, I'll speak to this a little bit. It kind of feels good to have a target on your back. I want to know your thoughts on it.
Right, right. No, you're absolutely right. They do have a target on their back now. I think teams are taking them a little more seriously now that they've been winning games, and that Randall and Brunson, for example, have been extremely consistent. I think you like I've mentioned a few times in these podcasts, they've been consistent all year, and that's been the big reason why we've been as successful as we are. But I think, like you said, it kind of is a good feeling having a target on your back, because now it's like, okay, now teams are actually taking you for real, and teams are treating you like a good team, like a good playoff team. Teams are treating you like that. So I think, it is good to have that feeling. And I do think, with that, we're going to obviously need other guys to step up, like RJ, Quickly, Hart, guys like that. They're going to have to step up. But we've seen them do it before. We've seen Quickly step up many times on and off, whether it's off the bench or if he's had to come in and place a start for somebody. We've seen him do it all the time, and we've seen Hart run really well at the second unit. So I really like that right there, how we have that depth and those options to fall back on if Randall and Brunson are game planned heavily and are trapped up. But something I would like to point out, we've seen Randall and Brunson do really well against good defenders. We saw Jalen Brunson put up 39 against Mikal Bridges the other night, and we saw Julius Randle put up 43 on Bam Adebayo just 2 nights ago, and we saw Julius Randle put up a bunch of threes on OG Anunoby earlier this season. Those are just examples right there of how they've been able to handle those matchups with the tough defenders. And I saw a thing. The Knicks rank last in assists per game, but have the fourth highest offensive rating. That tells me they're really good in one-on-one games. They have really good. They find a way to get the ball into the basket no matter what. Even if it's without moving the ball as much. And I know, less ball movement is not the most ideal thing for a team, but with who we have to fall back on, like Brunson and Randall, for example, I like the chances they have against defensive matchups like that. And I think come the playoff time, let's say we play Cleveland first round, because that's what it seems like we're going to end up doing. So let's say we do that. You're probably going to see a lot more like zone defense being played on it, because Cleveland does not have the best guard play defensively. Garland and Mitchell are not exactly marketed as good defenders, but Jared Allen and Evan Mobley are lockdown defenders down there. And I think you're going to see a lot more like zone to try to stop like Brunson and Randall, for example, from getting into the paint and doing getting to their strength, because that is both their strengths really. But so like you said, we're going to need other guys to step up to kind of break those kind of schemes, break that kind of zone, break it up a little bit, and make your offense a little more versatile. So I think those are things to watch for. But like to wrap up the point, having a target on your back is a great thing, a great feeling, really, because usually it's always, oh, teams aren't looking at us like seriously. They're not. They're looking at us just like either right now it would have been a meh team, or in the past just an awful team to watch or to play against. So now that we're good, now that we're winning all these games, we currently have the highest win streak in the NBA. So now that we have that, we've had two 8-game winning streaks this season. We've shown that we can get red hot and just get everything clicking at one time. We have shown we can stumble a little bit, and things kind of fall apart a bit too. But even in those games, we're usually never out of it. So I think a thing right there is that teams are going to see like how close we usually are in games, and how often we're in games, and how we're not really out of games even when we're stumbling a little bit. And they're going to see that and be like, okay, we can't take our foot off the gas when we play the Knicks. We have to try. We have to actually, take these guys seriously, because they can break your hearts, just like Julius Randle did against Miami. Miami took that lead in the final seconds. You think the game's over because they're on a big run, and Randle just snapped their hearts out, just shattered them. And that's exactly what the Knicks can do to any team right now, I feel like. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like one of those things where, you feel like you made a statement in Miami. You feel like you didn't just win, you made a statement, right? Like that's kind of the big thing here where yes, obviously winning matters because wins and losses. And honestly, I don't care how the Knicks get their wins from this point forward because it is crunch time. The Knicks have to just get wins whenever they can, however they can, wherever they can. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that I don't want to make statements or I don't want that like extra effect as you mentioned. They broke Miami's heart. They shattered Miami's heart, and they also put Miami in a situation where yes, they beat the Hawks yesterday, but had they not beaten the Hawks, they would have fallen to the 8th seed. So now you put extra pressure on Miami, who's 2 games back of the 6th seed and is 4 games back of us. They are in real trouble, right? You put them, that win would have meant everything for them because now they would be, if I'm not mistaken, they would have 30 losses and 35 wins. They'd be a game back of the Nets. The Knicks would have 28 losses. They would be 3 games back in loss, 2 games back in loss coming against the Knicks. That's much more feasible than that huge swing that you just put on them and the immense amount of pressure, right? Again, it's that pressure you place on them to continue to have to play well because they're playing catch up now. They do not control their own destiny. But I guess I'll give my final thoughts here and hand it to you to give your final thoughts as well. But the way I look at this Knicks team now is that, again, if this team loses to a Cavs team in the postseason in the first round, I'm not going to sit here and say this team, underperformed. They didn't perform to the level they should have, right? But I feel like I'm walking into the postseason, walking into the rest of this season with, I expect this team to do really good things. I expect this team to continue to perform well. I expect this team to continue to impress me because this team is good. This team is legitimately good, and I want them to continue to have statement wins like the ones they have against Miami, like the one they had against Boston, like the one they had against Brooklyn tonight. They really have an opportunity not just to make a statement to the East, but to the entire league if they're to win. Especially if they somehow do it without Brunson. I don't know how I'd react. I really don't know how I'd react.
No, yes, and I agree. They got to keep their foot on the gas. They got to keep going. Can't slow down. And like you said, now the bar is set much higher because now it's like, okay, now, the preseason expectation was, okay, you were going to win probably like 42 games, finish around 500. Now you're expected to win almost 50, and I don't know if they're going to win 50 games because they'd have to just continue to get red hot. And I know at some point, quite frankly, just realistically speaking, the Knicks will get cold at some point down the stretch. They'll lose a couple games. Teams can't stay hot forever. That's just not how sports work. But you know, now the expectation is much higher. They're expected to win closer to 50 games now than before when they were expected to be 500 team. Now, like I said, it's a higher standard. You're expected to do more if you come to the playoffs, and like just to, follow up on your point also, getting these statement wins like these, either whether it's a blowout win against a good team or one where you rip out a playoff contender's hearts like you did against Miami. When you do things like that, that makes a huge statement. Not, and like you said, not just to the East, but to the entire NBA, because now the entire NBA is watching you and going, okay, wait, hold on, we might need to watch these guys a little more because they could creep up on us real fast and just completely break our hearts too. They could do the same thing they did to Miami. So they're gonna look at that and keep an eye on us. And I think now, as we see this winning streak continue, and how well Randall and Brunson have been playing over the past like 2 months or so, I think we're starting to see more teams and more fans alike taking the Knicks more seriously. And I think that's a really good thing because this team is good. Like you said, this team's good. This is not a bad team. This is also more than just a mid team, as everyone had said during the season. This is more than that. They're a good team now. They're not average. They're above average. They're one of the best offensive teams right now in the NBA. They have one of the best net ratings in the NBA. They're a serious team. they're a team you need to watch for. They're no joke. So, looking at things like that, just to wrap up the point real fast, you know, I like what we got going on. I really do. And I like how we have that target now. I like seeing that. I like having that feeling. I like getting these statement wins because they're huge. They prove a lot of things wrong. They prove a lot of people wrong for anything they had said about the Knicks early in the season or during the season. Proves a lot of people wrong because now they're showing that, like, hey, we can be a good team. We just need to get clicking. And right now they are clicking. So now they're like showing, like, look what happens when we're clicking. We're a great team. So you got to take us seriously because if we get hot like this, then you guys could be in trouble. That's basically their statement to those other teams. And I like that. And I like the mentality we have going on right now. So, like I said before, real quick, just wrap it up. Keep your foot on the gas. See if you can get the win against Boston. Boston's a great team. So, if they lose, it happens. All good things come to an end at some point. So, you might have to just take it. It'll be a tough pill to swallow because you want to keep winning games. The feeling of winning feels so great, right? But if they can win without Brunson, like you said, then that would be something. That would be like that would showcase the depth a lot more because Brunson's been kind of the guy who's been keeping the team on his back. Anytime we need to get big buckets, you always go to him, right? But if they can win without Brunson, then that would be a huge statement. Like, look, we're good, and we have the capabilities to back up our guys when they're not able to play. So, and we saw early in the season when Brunson had missed a handful of games, Manuel quickly stepped up. He played really well. We held our own, won a few games. Mitchell Robinson was out. Jericho Sims came in, started games. Hartenstein was the backup. We went like 8-6, I think, without Mitch, which is a very good record given that Mitch is our starting center, and then we were playing a third string center to start. So, given that thing right, given those things right there, they've shown so far they can, maintain their depth. But I think if they were to able, let's say Brunson couldn't play and they beat Boston, that would put a statement to that. That'd be like, look, we're a deep team. You gotta take us seriously because we're not a joke. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. End of the day, if you're someone who's watching this channel and you're thinking to yourself, is this Knicks team good or not? Answer is yes. Our answer to you is a resounding yes. I think this team is really doing things that, quite frankly, are much more historic than people are giving them credit for in terms of the Knicks franchise, in terms of relative to other Knicks seasons. This isn't just a fluke team. But, at the end of the day, I'm really excited to see what this team can continue to do the rest of the season. I'm really excited for this matchup tonight. I feel like tonight is a less pressured situation because you feel like, you're in there with house money. If the Knicks can pull off a win, that'd be great. If the Knicks don't win, you try to reset against Charlotte and then go on that West Coast trip. But thank you guys again so much for checking us out. We appreciate your guys' continued support. You guys have been great. We actually have a new TikTok now, so you guys can follow that. That'll be in the description. You can follow the Twitter and the Instagram also as well in the description. I'm Ryan Garcia. That's Dylan Backer. You guys can check out our Twitters. It's right above our heads. And we'll see you guys in the next Fireside Knicks episode. Peace out.